Like most of Shakespeare's plays, he didn't invent the plot and characters of The Merchant of Venice all by himself. In fact, the play mixes and matches the storylines and characters from lots of different texts. For example, Il Pecorone by Giovanni Fiorentino was a collection of Italian short stories about a wealthy woman from Belmont. She helps out her husband's friend who owes a pound of flesh to a Jewish moneylender. Sound familiar? That's exactly what happens in The Merchant of Venice. Shakespeare also included ideas from other collections of short stories like Gesta Romanorum and Il Novellino. Basically, Shakespeare was like a DJ, remixing stories. The final product is a fun play full of humour, drama, and surprise twists. Shakespeare also plays around with ideas of genre. Remember, genre is a general category of literature, like science fiction, horror, action, romance. The Merchant of Venice is a comedy, with a few dark and tragic twists along the way. It's pretty messed up when Shylock, a moneylender, demands a pound of flesh taken from close to Antonio's heart. That would kill Antonio. The extreme, ugly hatred between Christians and Jews ultimately leads to Shylock's downfall. The downfall of a once powerful man is a common theme in tragedies. Yet for everyone else, everything turns out just fine. All the good guys end up with lots of money, and the play concludes with 3 happily married couples. Ending with marriage was typical for comedies during Shakespeare's time. The balance between light-hearted humour and darker elements led many to call the play a tragic comedy, or tragicomedy, a mix between tragedy and comedy.
Hey team, just a reminder, if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It really helps the channel out, and our next upload could be on something taught in your next class. Thanks, and back to the video.
Now let's consider the most important aspect of the play's context, race and religion. Shakespeare wrote The Merchant of Venice during the Elizabethan period in England, when Queen Elizabeth ruled. Christianity was the dominant religion, and those belonging to religious minorities, like Jews, were regarded with suspicion, fear, and even hostility. A fancy word to describe hatred and prejudice towards Jewish people is anti-Semitism. Lots of Elizabethan Christians and plenty of characters in The Merchant of Venice could be described as anti-Semitic because of their hatred towards Jews. The Jews' historical homeland was Israel, but way back in the year 135, the Romans kicked the Jews out of Israel. As a result, Jewish communities travelled to settle all over Europe in a movement called the diaspora. Throughout Europe, lots of Christians were suspicious of Jews and limited their job opportunities and landowning rights. However, there was one job that Jews could have that Christians couldn't: money lending. In the Middle Ages and in Shakespeare's time, Christians were forbidden from charging interest when they lent out money. Jews, of course, did not have to follow Christian rules, so lots of money-lending jobs went to Jews, like Shylock, an important character in The Merchant of Venice. Many moneylenders became quite wealthy by charging interest to people who borrowed money. Lots of European governments didn't mind the fact that Jews were becoming rich, because this meant they could profit from taxing the moneylenders. However, most ordinary people still distrusted Jews, thinking that they were greedy and only interested in money. Anti-Semitic ideas became so strong that in 1290, King Edward kicked all the Jews out of England. This meant that by Shakespeare's time, very few Jews lived in England. People watching The Merchant of Venice had probably never even met a Jew. That's one of the reasons why Shakespeare set his play in Italy, where a strong community of Jews from the diaspora lived. But even in Venice, Jews still faced discrimination. They had to live in a separate part of the city to everyone else, called the Venetian ghetto. And they had to wear special clothes, so everyone knew they were Jewish. And, of course, their job opportunities were still limited, which is why lots of Jews were moneylenders, like Shylock. In England, there was one famous Jew that audiences had probably heard of, Rodrigo Lopez, Queen Elizabeth's doctor. In 1594, around the time the play was written, Lopez was accused of planning to assassinate the Queen. Even though there was no evidence against him, the court found him guilty. Tragically, Lopez was executed. After this, anti-Semitism in England rose dramatically. People were scared and angry, seeing Jews as a threat. Of course, because very few Jews lived in England, people's attitudes were based on racist stereotypes. In many ways, Shylock fits a lot of these stereotypes. That's why lots of people think that the play reinforces racist ideology, because it depicts Shylock in such a negative light. However, before you jump to conclusions, let's think about another play depicting a Jewish moneylender, The Jew of Malta, written by Christopher Marlowe in 1589. In The Jew of Malta, the main character is a greedy Jew named Barabbas. Barabbas's character has no positive characteristics. He is 100% evil and even poisons nuns. A few years after The Jew of Malta, Shakespeare wrote The Merchant of Venice. Shylock is very similar to Barabbas. He is wealthy, greedy, and mean. However, unlike Marlowe, Shakespeare shows a human side to Shylock. In a moving speech, Shylock talks about all the discrimination and hatred towards him just because he is a Jew. Shakespeare is forcing his audience to confront the injustice of racism towards Jews. As you read the play, decide for yourself, is Shakespeare reinforcing anti-Semitic ideas? Or does he want his audience to change their racist attitude? You can find out more by viewing our lesson on race and prejudice. Lastly, let's consider the attitudes towards gender in Shakespeare's day. Remember, Elizabethan society was patriarchal, which meant that men had all the power and women were expected to be quiet and subservient. In a family unit, the male head of the family was in control, and the women had no say. You can find out more by viewing our lesson on gender in the play, but for now, think about Portia and Jessica. Portia has to obey her father's wishes regarding who she marries, even after her father has died. Also think about how Shylock controls his daughter Jessica. However, plenty of characters in the play defy gender expectations. Jessica steals her father's money and elopes, and Portia successfully disguises herself as a male lawyer and calmly rescues Antonio from Shylock's demands. You can see that Shakespeare always likes to shake things up and challenge our assumptions. We hope you enjoyed this Schooling Online production. For more easy lessons on The Merchant of Venice, check out our explanation of the play's plot summary.